Hey, this is Dave from MetalEpidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review, joined by Duncan and by Kyle. We are here to check out the new album from metallic hardcore quintet Foreign Pain. The band's new album, Death of Divinity, will be released on September 3rd via Good Fight Music. So this is a debut album from Foreign Pain, and one that's been about 5 years in the making. Death of Divinity was engineered by Roger Camero at Bright Lights, Bright Mountain Studios, and mixed and mastered by Botch. The album explores themes of anger, isolation and frustration, ultimately commenting on the shared human experience and giving listeners a deeply personal batch of songs that are as vulnerable as they are pissed off. The band also features The Ghost Inside guitarist Aaron Brooks. So, I just mentioned to you guys off the recording there, when I heard the first single of this, which is the first track on the album, I was pretty much sold, to be honest.
Shat his pants is what he said. When I heard the first song on this, I shat my pants. It was running down my legs, just a fecal tsunami. That's what he said. And then he said, I have to listen to that again.
Did so in the bathtub.
Yeah. Yes, it did. Yeah, this is a Dave album. This is 100% a Dave album. I'm not even going to beat about the bush here. I have a bit of an unhealthy addiction with kind of 90s hardcore, metalcore. One of my all-time favourite bands is a band called Turmoil from, I think it was Philadelphia they're from. They put out, in my opinion, one of the best hardcore albums of the 90s. It's called The Process Of. And when I heard the first single from Foreign Pain, I was instantly getting thoughts of Turmoil in my head. I was thinking that's very kind of similar in tone, and from there I couldn't wait to hear the kind of rest of this album. And to be honest, the rest of the album kind of did what I was hoping it was going to do. There's a few unexpected surprises, but for the most part, this is a kind of tight, punishing, kind of 30-minute onslaught of 90s hardcore meets late 90s, early 2000s metalcore. The riffs are just like loaded with malice. They kind of strike hard from the get-go and don't really let up for this album's duration. And for me, you can really hear that this has been a kind of labour of love for this band. Each track kind of feels like it's been kind of carefully formulated to deliver the goods. You know, I lost count of how many times there was a riff that just made you kind of grimace, you know, with how kind of disgustingly dissonant it was. And the Turmoil influence is there in abundance. But there's like a kind of streak of like Converge in there. There's a little bit of Botch in there as well. A little bit of Cro-Mags as well on tracks like Kill to Rise. This is the type of hardcore that I love to hear. You know, it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. You know, they wear a lot of their influences on their sleeve, but my God, is it executed with like precision and feeling. And we heard something similar earlier in the year from Worst Out, a French kind of hardcore band. They put out an album called Extinction, which was another really kind of savage album. And I think, you know, there are similarities between the two, and I think Foreign Pain have delivered, you know, something that's just as good as that album. But what I would say about Death of Divinity is there were a few more kind of surprises that I wasn't completely expecting on the album. Firstly, bass drops are back, gentlemen. Come on, can I get hell yeah for the bass drops? It's been a while since I've heard a good bass drop. You know, like, remember back in the day where it was just like every chorus or every breakdown just came with a big boom. Love it. And there's a track on here called Torchlight, and it delivers that kind of like sonic punch, which I just absolutely loved. It's not something they do like a lot of, like, don't expect it on every track or anything like that, but when it happened, it kind of just adds this kind of another kind of level of power to the kind of riff that they're playing. And there were some riffs on Torchlight and also Holy Order. It really took me back. It kind of made me think of like really old school Every Time I Die, like a kind of like Hot Damn, that kind of era where Every Time I Die were very just like chaotic and just kind of brought the heat. But again, it kind of fits in with that kind of early 2000s sound. And I do love a wee movie sample. I'm not gonna lie, I do love a wee movie sample. So at the end of it's Holy Order again, I think. There's the little sample at the end, which is from, I think it was Killing Me Softly, I think is the movie, the Brad Pitt movie. I think that's what it's from. So I do like a little movie sample in my music as well. I thought it was pretty cool. Blood Oath kind of caught me by surprise. They kind of started to kind of lace in some like kind of ominous kind of synths into the mix as well, which I thought was pretty cool. Nice idea. It kind of gave that track a kind of change in tone, which I liked. But I think if there's one thing these guys are really good at, it's just dropping an absolute kind of hand grenade of a riff. The ending to Blood Oath just had me up out my chair, ready to throw down. My wife and child are fine, by the way. But just like so good. That ending to that track was so good. Track 6 though is called Nell, and it's one of the singles they released. That just had me from the get-go. I'm pretty sure there's like a little kind of small intro on the guitar to that track, but then it kicks into this big meaty riff. I'm sure it was a polyrhythm. I was trying to count it in my head and got lost a few times, but I'm sure it was a polyrhythm. And I didn't really see that coming on this type of album. But it kind of excited me that they were experimenting with more like kind of complex rhythms on the album. And then the around about the kind of 1 minute mark, it transitions into something a lot more kind of reminiscent of a kind of melodic hardcore or melodic metalcore. And to be honest, it had a bit of that kind of Ghost Inside vibe. So I can only assume that maybe Aaron Brooks had something to kind of do with that part of the song. It definitely had that kind of vibe to it. It totally worked though. And I liked that little bit of contrast on the album where the band started to show us some more kind of light and shade. And then we get a little bit of that kind of melody coming through on I Thought It Was Me. But this time they play around with the kind of tone of the melody, going for something a bit kind of darker and more kind of ominous, and more of that kind of upbeat kind of melodic hardcore that we heard on Nell. There's also a riff on a track called We Are What We Fear. It just has such a good groove to it. It's got this really kind of stomping kind of rhythm to it. It kind of put me in mind of when I heard Infestation by Harm's Way. It's the first track off Rust. And there's a riff on that track that has a kind of similar kind of feel and rhythm to this one. But it's those types of moments on the album that you just can't help but really get into and kind of bang your head along with it. They finish off the album with the longest tracks, about 4.5 minutes, but it's also like the kind of darkest track of the album. Lots of really kind of menacing riffs, and again a bit of that kind of ominous atmosphere injected into the track with some of the synths. There was even a little moment of kind of lead work that reminded me of Distant. They're a completely different genre of band, they're a deathcore band, but the kind of lead work did kind of put me in mind of that kind of Distant sound. And they go out with an absolute bang. It's one of those tracks that stops and they do a really kind of like slow 4 count back into the track and then just kind of annihilate you with this something tremendously heavy at the end. I think the only point of the album that I didn't think was completely needed was the interlude. There's a track called And the World Remained Silent, which it comes after a track called I Thought It Was Me, and that track kind of leans more into that kind of melodic hardcore territory. So when that next track kicks in, it's like an interlude track, and I don't know, I just didn't feel like it really needed to be there.
Its placement's weird. It's two songs from the end, and like that makes sense if the last 2 songs transition to something different sounding, which they don't. It kind of reverts. Like, to me, that song, if you are going to keep that, needs to be somewhere in the middle to give a break between the ferocity. It just, to me, it's more a weird placement other than I didn't necessarily like it. I kind of felt like that kind of moment of respite felt like a kind of missed opportunity to kind of keep the momentum of the album going. But it's a really small gripe, to be honest. I am a mark for this sort of stuff, so it's probably no surprise that I enjoyed it so much. And I loved the really just aggressive, kind of hard hitting production that it had as well. The bass just sounded really
kind of dirty and kind of clangy sounding, which I think suits this sound out the ground. There's a great moment on Holy Order when the bass just comes in on its own and it just sounds absolutely filthy. I think this has got a lot going for it, in my opinion. Not only does it have, a lot of variety in the rhythms and the tempos, plus it's got heaviness in spades, but it also has that little kind of splash of something more melodic or something more ominous at times. They don't overdo it, but I think it's just enough to create a break in the kind of relentless style. I think if you're a fan of that era of hardcore and metalcore, then this is 100% an album you should be looking into buying. It's awesome. I really, really enjoyed this. What about you guys? Duncan, what did you make of this one?
I'm going to echo a lot of what you said. One of my kind of listening notes for this has an Every Time I Die feel and vibe to it. Not all the songs, but it's in there. And it kind of caught me off guard because the opener doesn't necessarily lean that way, but they start splicing it in as the album goes through. And it's never like a full song, it's just segments and parts of the arrangement that come in that just remind me, especially with the vocals, which are definitely heavier than what Keith Buckley does, but there's a cadence and a range to it when it hits that just it instantly kind of came to the forefront of my brain. I like this quite a bit. I'm not as passionate about 90s kind of hardcore as you are. My introduction was through you. You gave me the albums back in the day. And I know that you are a total shill for this shit. It's like, if anyone's wanting to buy Dave a present, just find an obscure 90s hardcore band and buy it from him. And he will love you long time. Yes, I will. What I enjoyed about this is, once again, it's a lot of what you've already pointed out. They don't necessarily stick to... The problem I have with a lot of 90s hardcore in general is there's a formula, they're happy with the formula, and they don't deviate from the formula. These guys are kind of guilty of that to an extent, but they aren't afraid to mix things. And Nell is a great example of that, because it almost feels like, specifically from the beginning, it feels like the song that is different from everything else you've heard before, and they don't really go back to either, and I like that because it makes it stand out. I, like yourself, miss a time in the world where bands in the 90s and early 2000s would have the confidence to throw in a little movie sample. Yes, they would throw it in. Yes, they might put a little effect on it. That's fine. I think it's a lost art. You're talking about like bass booms or bass drops or whatever you want to call the figures. Don't let the listeners be confused. Dave has an app on his phone that whenever he presses it does the bass booms, and he plays it through every song he listens to. Whenever he thinks it should be like that, he does it anyway. So regardless whether the band puts it in or doesn't, Dave will fix that for you. Auto-correct it so it's good. I kind of that once again. It's just bands have become so heavy nowadays that we just don't need that. Like the aforementioned Distant don't need to put a bass boom in because their guitar has a string that allows them to do that. So there is something refreshing about hearing that, and there is something kind of nostalgic. So it kind of made me smile when it came in, which I don't think is the effect. I think what they want from the desired effect is a bit ooh. But to me it made me smile because it's just those sort of things that when we were a band back in 2004 we were doing, because we're like bass booms in every song, and a 4 count to bring us back in and slow the riff down. All those sort of things are kind of cool because to me it shows that it's not a novelty for them. It actually shows that that's the era of music they're interested in, and they're using it in the right way, which I enjoyed. I think vocally he has a tone that I fucking love. It is angry. It's kind of that angry way where you stub your toe, but instead of doing the inward kind of like that, he's just like venting it out, and I love it. It so works on what they're doing here. The production's great. It really, really, really works. I'm looking at Kyle he's not shook his head. So the production's great. Like yourself, I enjoy. I've said it many times before. I enjoy being able to hear everything on an album. I also like that kind of clangy bass that you're talking about. It's only really hardcore that utilises that sound as a way to just like punish you, and that's what it does here. It's just so distinctive and it stands out against everything else that's happening. They are tight. like really fucking tight. And when the grooves kick in, you know, like we recently did a Twitch stream where you were talking about groove metal bands. There's about 2 songs in here that I could easily see you saying, I wouldn't put the whole album as a groove metal band, but these 2 fucking songs. And all that kept going through my head while I was listening to it is, Dave's going to love this, Dave's going to love this, Dave's going to love this. I think this is really good. I think it delivers a level of ferocity and anger that I didn't realise I needed this week, but turns out I have. This was the album, by the way, I was listening to as I raced, breaking several speed laws on the way back to the house to do this recording tonight, because it prompted me to go faster on the way. So, don't know if that was our intention, but it did the job. Yeah, I thought this was great.
Nice. Kyle, what about yourself?
It's a fucking echo chamber in here, isn't it? I don't know what else I can add.
You were driving back from Glasgow really fast as well, Kyle.
Yeah, man.
Thought you passed
all the way
me.
back to Norway. You should have seen the trail I left through the ocean.
Yeah. Skimmed right along like a stone. You have to say something now. You can't just leave us
right.
with...
It's music for fish. No, we're in producer things. Like that bass tone has got a dangle on it. Like a dangle. The A has an umlaut. It's a dangle. You know, it's fucking. It sounds great. I love that fucking bass tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's thick with 2 C's. It is definitely.
It's just.
It's like that when you listen to like Tool. What's it? I'm trying to remember if is it sober?
It might be.
No, it's not sober. Is it sober? I think it is sober, and it's like that. It's that clang because that first undertow has that bass sound. It's that 90s metallic, the strings reverberating and hitting it. That's the sound on the album, and it fucking works.
Brand new strings through a great, either a Sans Amp or a Dark Glass pedal or something like that. It's fucking awesome, and I love it. I just love it. I could talk all day about this one thing. The bass tones balanced so well between the high and the low, and I just can't get over it. It was just so good, and I was like, I can hear it, the whole thing. And then the guitars came in as well. And I was like, they're all right.
Spoken as a true bassist.
Nah, the guitar tones are fucking good as well. They're really, really good. You know what? The whole mix was great, actually. I think there definitely is some studio fuckery in there, but it's tastefully done. It's to a level where it's like just enhancing the performance. It's not changing it too much, and it's just bringing things in, I think.
Yeah.
So it's all right. It's like, of course, I like to hear the natural everything, how they played it on the recording, but it's obviously impossible nowadays. But I think it was tasteful because it didn't ruin the experience, if you know what I mean. I could hear the separate hits in the drums, and the snare drum wasn't the same sample all the time. It was very good, and there wasn't too much time alignment or anything like that. It sounds really good. It was the whole 90s aesthetic all over again. But really well done, and I like the structures of the songs, actually. I thought it was quite interesting. Like you said earlier, there's a formula. I was like, they kind of played against it more than I thought they would. Against that formula, I thought, the structures were like, I didn't expect that to come in right now, and that bit there and this part here and stuff. And I thought, and like the way they mixed in the other stuff as well, it just felt effortless. It just felt like that was who they are. They're not like we're a 90s hardcore band and here's a synth bit. Like, no. It's like, no, that.
Show me that band. Where's that band?
It just fit right in, and he didn't think twice about it. He just went with it, and it felt great.
You do know what they call a 90s hardcore band with a synth player? You know what they call their synth player?
What?
Roadie. They ain't playing anything, they're just carrying shit.
He
plays off stage where no one can see him.
They go to the front of house guy before the show, say, we got a synth guy, just turn it off. But I do want to mention the bass drops, because I was like, I cringed just a little bit, and then I smiled, and then I went, you didn't really need it, did you? It was heavy.
I disagree.
Yes, they did.
You need
I mean, I'm not a fan of them. I got sick of them very quickly in the early 2000s. I was like, okay, come on. I have an entire library full of different bass drops, slightly differently pitched, slightly different timbres, all that kind of stuff. Lots of them that I made my own that suck. Lots of them I downloaded that don't suck. And there is a big fucking lock on that file saying, do not ever use because, oh my God, it's 2021. Other than that, this album's great. But it did give me a smile. It was like, first it was like, oh, and then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, it didn't take anything away from the album for me, really. It just made me just think for a second, like, oh, I've got that big library. What can I do with that? Nothing. I can do nothing with that.
Yeah, I liked it. They only just threw it in now and again. It wasn't like it's not all the time.
Yeah. If it was all the time, I'd have been like, that's a no. But it was tasteful.
Yeah, it wasn't like overbearing either, because like when it got to a point back in like the early 2000s where it was all you could hear was the bass drop.
It's a bass drop, compress everything out of the signal, and just bring it back in.
You know who was really bad for it? Chimera were really bad for it. Blame them.
Yeah,
well, like the bass drop. Yeah.
Also love the idea that Kyle's got like a sample library of bass drop synths, which
there's
is
like
basically
500 different bass drops. Yeah,
it's basically Kyle treats it like it's the Necronomicon. You're like, can't fucking open it, or the Deadites will take over the world. I kind of love that. That's the way.
Just
that's
sat here chanting in bass. If I get the right combination of keys, it'll open the fucking door.
Nice.
Oh,
nice. Okay, so ratings for this new one from Foreign Pain. It did everything that I was hoping that it was going to do. I think it's really good for a debut as well.
This is a debut.
Yeah,
I actually didn't get that. What the fuck?
5 years in the making debut.
Yep. So that's pretty impressive to put out something like at this level first release. I mean, I know there've been in other bands, and like Ghost Inside's quite a big band, but still, for a new band putting this out, impressed, definitely impressed. As I said, it kind of reminded me in places of Worst Out, and I think it's probably on the same kind of level as that album, which I gave a 4.5 to, so I'm going to stick with that for this one, 4.5. Duncan, what about you?
This is a 4-star album from me. There's a lot to enjoy here. Like this is just does what it says on the tin. Angry, kind of snarly, pissed off, like brutal, well written, well recorded, and well structured. Hardcore. With that big old slab of metal in there, just to give it something to bite into. Yeah, this is really, really, really good. One of these ones where like. This is an album that doesn't take much effort to enjoy. No. At all. You know what I mean? I think personally it would have a quite large cross appeal to people that wouldn't necessarily listen to this genre. I think there's plenty in here to pull them in. So four from me. Nice. And Kyle?
I'm going to go with a 4 as well. It was highly enjoyable. Very well put together.
Awesome. Foreign Pain, Death of Divinity drops on the 3rd of September on Good Fight Music. If you want to check out the band, it's facebook.com/foreignpainhc. I'll put a link in the description below to their Facebook and to the pre-order for the album so you can check it out. Let us know what you think when you hear it. That is the review. Thank you so much for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All those